Hi, good morning. At least it's morning for me. I don't know when you're watching this what time of day it is, but here I am, holed up in beautiful Ojai, California, so that's lucky. I have these trees around me. That's not so bad. I'm here to talk to you about some Shakespeare. My good friend and colleague John Walcott has asked me to make a digital lesson, sharing some of my thoughts and experiences as an actor and director of Shakespeare with you. So fasten your seatbelts, get comfortable, and here we go. My name is Mike. I am from Houston originally. I went to Northwestern University up in Chicago to study acting, which was an incredible place to study. I was very, very blessed to be able to go there. And then I went straight from undergrad to grad school at UCLA. Also an incredible place to study. I worked with some great, great minds of classical theater, studying Shakespeare, among many other topics. And then I jumped right out of grad school into an Equity Theater, a beautiful 300-seat outdoor amphitheater in Topanga Canyon up in Malibu, where Shakespeare was, a primary focus of what they did. So I've performed a ton of Shakespeare, and then I got involved with Shakespeare Orange County. I have taken a Shakespeare workshop around the country that I'll dip into tiny pieces of during this little lesson I'm going to share with you today. So in that time, I have done a lot of Shakespeare, seen a lot of Shakespeare, directed a lot of Shakespeare, and I say that only to give you some background of where I'm coming from and what it is I want to share with you. One of the things I learned in my process of being a student, and continue to learn in my process of being a professional actor, I've worked in a lot of different theaters now and on film and television, is that there are a lot of people, especially when you're learning, that are going to tell you, my way is the way, this is the process. And that's great. When you're in that person's class, put on that hat, try it on, try out their process, totally embrace it. Even if it feels wrong, see what it's like. Because what you'll find is that over time, as a young developing actor, you will take, I like that piece of that process, and I like this thing that person does, and I really like that thing, and what you will do over time is assemble your own process. And that's what this is really all about, is you developing your own process based on all the different people that you're exposed to, myself included. So hopefully what I want you to get from this today is some little tool in your tool belt that I can share with you that you might find useful. So we're going to work on a speech from Julius Caesar, Mark Antony's very famous "Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears" speech. When approaching that speech, there's a couple of choices right from the beginning about how we can approach this material and how we can work on it together today. The first would be, I'm approaching this as I was cast in the play and I'm doing this speech as part of the play. I don't think that's the best way for us to work on it here today, mostly because in that circumstance, you're going to be working with a director. So you're going to have someone giving you a lot of feedback and helping you craft the arc of your character, the performance of this speech in particular, the arc of this speech, your reactions, the staging. You're going to have hopefully a good director like John helping you. So what I want to do today is think about this as an audition piece, as a monologue, and we'll talk about how I feel about that word shortly. Because as young actors going forth into the world, you're going to need to perform a monologue for all kinds of different reasons, right? You're going to have auditions, you're going to have scholarship auditions, you're going to have college auditions, and a Shakespeare monologue is going to be one of the things that many of those people are going to ask for and expect of you. So I want to talk about it in those terms so that we can talk about, you're working on your own, or maybe you get a little input from a coach or a teacher. How do you approach this material? How do you think of it? What's the process for creating a good audition piece out of a speech like this? So that's sort of the way in for us to work today, is how do I approach this as a monologue that I'm going to have to do and sort of create on my own, which is going to inform us differently than if we're working on it in the course of the play. So the first thing I'm going to do, if I get this as a monologue that I'm going to work on, on my own, it's going to sound very obvious. Read the play. Ding, 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 right? You got to read the play. You have to know it. You got to know everything about it. Sounds dumb and obvious. I have sat in many auditions as a director now. seen a lot of people, it's happened more than once that it's just obvious that somebody didn't read the play. So don't make that mistake. You won't. You're OCSA students. I have faith that that's not really the obstacle for you. The second thing is, there's a resource that I want to share with you that's one of my favorite go-to things when I start working on a piece of Shakespeare. There's an author, Isaac Asimov is his name, if you haven't heard of him. He's most well known for his science fiction. He's written a lot of really incredible science fiction books. However, he has written books on all manner of topics. He's a really, really smart, I would call him a genius. And he has a book on Shakespeare called Asimov's Guide to Shakespeare, or the Asimov Guide to Shakespeare. It's one of the two. And it is a magnificent resource, particularly if you're going to do the whole play, because he takes every single Shakespeare play and does an entire analysis, historical, humanitarian, philosophical, just an analysis of the play, the arc, the major characters. It's really, really a great resource. So that's the first thing I do after I read the play on anything I'm working on, is I crack open the Asimov Guide to Shakespeare and see what it has to offer. There's usually some interesting nugget in there that's going to give me something as an actor, as a performer, that I didn't think of, that I didn't know. And those are the things, right? Those are gold. Those are little jewels that can color our performance and just give us something that we might not have had if we approached it on our own. So that's number one, or number two. Number one was read the play. Number two is go to Asimov Guide to Shakespeare. Check that out. Number three, there is a system that I want to share with you when working, in particular, on an audition piece. And it's got 3 steps to it, 3.5 really. So step number 1, relationship. So what does that mean? Well, this is going to shoot me in a whole little tangent for a second. The most important person in your monologue is not you, believe it or not. It's your scene partner. And that's why I put monologue in quotes. Your monologue is never a monologue. And this isn't about Shakespeare. This is about performing audition pieces, period. Your monologue is not a monologue. Even if it's a Shakespearean soliloquy, it's not a monologue. It is a scene with a scene partner. This is so important. I cannot stress to you how important this is, and I'll give you an example of why in just a second. You have a scene partner in this scene, and that is the most important person in this scene. If you're doing a soliloquy from Hamlet where he's by himself, guess what? The scene partner is himself. He is having an argument, a dialogue with another part of himself. Much like, if you haven't seen the Lord of the Rings movies, they portray Gollum as they cut back and forth from Gollum to Gollum, the good Gollum to the evil Gollum, and he's having an argument with himself. Even in a moment where you're talking alone on stage, you have a scene partner, and it's you, or as could be the case with Hamlet, it's the audience, right? A lot of his soliloquies can be directed to be a conversation with the audience, which can then be maybe it's a subconscious or it's a blah, 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 blah. Point is, you have a scene partner. So number 1 of our 3 steps to making a good audition piece and a good approach to this Shakespearean material is relationship. Who are you talking to? So in this case, and I've got my trusty iPad here, trying to save paper in the world, right? I've got my friends, Romans countrymen, here it is. In this case, he's talking to who? The people of Rome, right? Now that's a relationship. It's not just the people of Rome. You got to think about what that relationship means and who Antony is. Antony's a public figure. He's also the champion, right? Caesar says, will you run the race and touch the women for that? I forget the lines, but he'll touch the women so that they'll bear fruit and make sure to touch Calpurnia. And he's the people's champion. They love him. The people love Antony, right? He's the man. Well, that's a relationship. He has a relationship with those people. He knows he has a history with them. And that's, I'm jumping ahead to one of my other numbers. So there's a relationship. What is that relationship? 2 is a history. So that was the next one that bleeds into relationship and history are very intertwined because a relationship is based on a history, right? So if I'm in doing a scene, well, in anything, but I was going to say it's, Hamlet, Ophelia, right? Ophelia, that's a relationship. You have to be very specific based on the play and based on your understanding of the character, what that relationship is, what it means to both of them. And then history. History helps define the relationship. So if it were Hamlet, Ophelia, how long have they known each other? How did that relationship start? Have they ever kissed before, right? In this case, again, it's him speaking to a huge group of people in Rome. So it's a little different. He doesn't have a one-on-one relationship, although he probably has a one-on-one relationship with some of the people that are out in the crowd. But there is a history. The history of his role in Rome. This is where you can go into the history books, you can dig into the Asimov Guide to Shakespeare, and you can just come up with your own history of what is his relationship to the people of Rome, specifically. So 1 is relationship, 2 is history, 3 is need. Now this one is so important. It's hit home, hopefully by now, in all of your acting studies, is your need. What do you need from your scene partner? It's the old, what's my motivation as an actor, right? What do you need? What do you need this person to do? Why are you talking to this person? What do you want from them? So we'll look at that as it relates to this speech. But the biggest component of the need that most people don't talk about, it's my favorite thing, and it is the fuel that lights the fire. Or else. I call it the or else. It's so important to have a strong or else. So there's a sentence that I like to create that goes, I need to blank this blank, or else, and there's that important or else, dun 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 dun, or else blank. I need to blank this blank, or else blank. Very simple sentence. If you can write this sentence with active language in very clear terms for yourself, you'll make a great understanding of why you are speaking. So I'm just going to come up with one for this speech. It's not going to be the best because I'm coming up with it on the spot. But I need to convince this mob of angry Romans that I need to convince this mob of angry Romans that I am right and that the killing of Caesar was murder, or else, there's the important or else. Or else what? Or else they could turn on me and kill me. And here's the thing about an or else. Your or else has to be powerful. You need a fiery or else. The stakes have to be high. If they are not, then your whole performance is going to be flat. You're not going to be fueled by anything dangerous, right? Your or else has to be powerful. Well, this one's pretty good. Or else they'll turn on me and I could die, right? This angry mob could turn on me and kill me, right? So my or else is super duper high. That's good. That's what you want. That's a hook. That's a powerful motivation that will drive you through the entire speech that you can reference all the time. I need to convince this mob of angry Romans that I am right and Brutus was wrong, or that Caesar was murdered unfairly, or else they will turn and possibly kill me. That's a great place to start work on this piece. Right, if we have that understanding. Now, here's the trick. I'm going to give you a little trick for your tool belt. How to start a monologue or an audition piece. Remember when I said it's not a monologue, it's a scene? The most powerful way to start your monologue is by reacting to your scene partner. Let's say it again, because it's that important. The most powerful way to start your monologue is to react to your scene partner. All right, so hopefully I drilled that home. We're going to start by reacting to your scene partner. And I'm going to demonstrate the difference. I'll do it with this speech. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. A lot of actors, especially young actors, start their monologue by acting. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. Right? Or whatever the scene is. Here I go. I've launched into my monologue. The best way to get our attention is to react to whatever it is your scene partner says that makes you want to speak. Right? If it's in a scene, a one-on-one scene, your partner says something and you go, well, I didn't say that, right? That's a great way to start a monologue, with a reaction to something else. It tells me, oh, they're in a scene. This isn't a monologue, this is alive. Wait, what? She misused me past the endurance of a block, right? That's Benedict, right? So in this case, the mob is yelling, they're angry. So the first beat of this monologue isn't mine, it's theirs. So it's not, friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. It's, friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I'm reacting to something. It's alive. And that's the biggest thing that happens in monologues, especially Shakespeare. They get dead. They get stale because you're working by yourself in a room, memorizing it over and over and over. And it gets to be this thing, the train gets on the tracks and it goes from A to B to C and it never changes because that's safe. Monologues and auditions are scary, and you want what is safe. And I'm here to tell you, don't be safe. Be willing to not know exactly how it's going to come out, or exactly what's going to come next. Then it's alive, then it's exciting, then it's dangerous. It's dangerous for you, the actor, which is vulnerable, and guess what? As an audience, we love vulnerability. That's what's exciting. And it's so hard to do in an audition. And it's exactly what we want to see when we're the ones running the audition. So be willing to let your scene partner go first. All right, that's the trick. Now, let's get into this monologue. And it's not a monologue, it's a scene. All right, so we've talked about that first moment. It's a reaction. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. All right, so there we go. Reaction, very specific, relationship, history, need, or else they're going to kill me. Hopefully you could see all those already working in that. All right? We're going to work through this monologue just bit by bit. I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking as I'm putting this into my head. I don't know this by heart. I know it because I've been in this play. I've actually never played Antony. I played Brutus and somebody else. I can't think of who. Sorry for the blowers. I'm hearing blowers out in the world. Hopefully you guys aren't getting bothered by that. So we're going to work through this together like I would as an actor. How do I approach this, right? I don't approach it by just trying to memorize the lines immediately. I do what I'm doing now, right? And this speech is full of rhetorical stuff. I do an Actor's Guide to Shakespeare that's a 90-minute language class. I use all of that stuff all the time in this. We don't have time here today because I'm trying to give you like a 20 to 30-minute deal on this speech. But there are tons of language tools that are in this that I'll hit them lightly if I get the time. But we're going to work through it. So the first reaction is theirs. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do lives after them. The good is oft interred with their bones. So let it be with Caesar. That's good. I feel good about that. I feel like that's in a place where I'm reacting to my scene partner. The stakes feel alive. It feels like my or else is very high. And now we're going to get into the meat of this thing. If the point of my speech, if what I've decided my need is to convince these people that Brutus was wrong, don't beep at me, iPad. If the point of this speech, if my need is to convince this angry mob that Brutus was wrong, I have a tactic. I have several tactics for doing it. And this is the next way into any speech is, once you have your need identified, you start to identify what are the tactics that I'm using to accomplish it. And each time you get to a new tactic, you need to have a shift, right? If you just get on, you're going to have a one-note piece. If you just say, this is my need, then I'm going to do it all the way, the same way from the beginning to the end. You've got to shift. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't work. If this works, I'm going to do it more. If this isn't working, I'm going to change tactics. So identifying moments where the tactics change is a big part of making this dynamic and exciting and alive. Right? So the first tactic he uses here is he's gonna set up this idea that Brutus is noble, that Brutus is an honorable man. And if Brutus is an honorable man, then what he did was justified. And therefore, if I can convince this angry mob that Brutus was not an honorable man, then what he did is no longer justified. And that, through this entire piece, is what I'm trying to do. And I have a bunch of different tactics and shifts when I try and do it. So let's work through it. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do lives after. Oops, screwed that line up. The evil that men do lives after them. The good is often interred with their bones. So let it be with Caesar. The noble Brutus hath told you that Caesar was ambitious. If it were so, it was a grievous fault. And grievously hath Caesar answered it. So there he is, right there, setting it up right from the beginning with the crowd, right? Tactic one. If the noble Brutus says this, he says that Caesar was ambitious, and if he was, so that's Antony telling the crowd, and if he's right, if that's true, Caesar has grievously answered for it. He paid for it with his life. The noble Brutus. By the way, I want you to listen to me doing one other thing as we work through this. Operative words. I don't know if anybody's talked to you about it yet. Operative words. It's part of my language, Shakespeare, how to perform Shakespeare stuff. Shakespeare's language is too rich, too dense, too beautiful, too hard to understand to give the audience all of it. So what you'll hear me do is I hit important words and I throw the rest away. You give your audience less and they will actually understand more because you do the work beforehand, what's important, so that the audience doesn't have to figure that out on the fly while they're listening to the play. So I pick out the most important word in each verse line or most important word or two, and I get rid of the rest. They're called operative words. I use them all the time. You'll hear me doing it. All right. The noble Brutus hath told you that Caesar was ambitious. If it were so, it were a grievous fault. And grievously hath Caesar answered it. Here, under leave of Brutus and the rest, for Brutus is an honorable man. So are they all honorable men. Come I to speak at Caesar's funeral. All right, so I'm really setting that up. You can hear me hitting those words. Tactic. I'm setting this up. If Brutus is honorable, then it's okay. But if he is not, then you got to be on my side of this. So I'll go back a little. And just hear me using those operative words, right? Come I to speak in Caesar's funeral. Right? I'm not hitting it all. Come I to speak at Caesar's funeral. I'm going to hit speak and I'm going to throw the rest away. You'll understand what I'm saying. You'll actually understand it better than if I try and give you the whole thing. All right. I'm going to go back. The noble Brutus hath told you Caesar was ambitious. If it were so, it was a grievous fault. And grievously hath Caesar answered it. Here, under leave of Brutus and the rest, for Brutus is an honorable man. So are they all honorable men. Come I to speak at Caesar's funeral. He was my friend, faithful and just to me. But Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. All right, so my first tactic shift there, I sneak in this first positive thing. I said at the beginning of the speech, I came to bury Caesar, not to praise him, and yet what did I just do? I praised him. He was faithful and just to me. I start small, just me. This is how he was to me. And I slip that in, go right back. But Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. And then guess what I'm going to do next? I'm going to praise Caesar. It's great. He shifts these tactics. And if you can, all speeches have this. What are your tactics to get what you need, and what's your or else? My or else is fueling everything I'm saying. That's the power behind all of this, is my or else. And my relationship and my history. Because guess what? In this speech, I also have to understand my relationship and history to Caesar. Because Caesar was my best friend. My best friend is dead. Right, so that, and he's right on the ground in front of me. I have to understand that relationship and history too. He was my friend, faithful and just to me. But Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. He hath brought many captives home from Rome, whose ransoms did the general coffers fill. Did this in Caesar seem ambitious? When that the poor have cried, Caesar hath wept. Ambition should be made of sterner stuff. Yet Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. You all did see that on the Lupercal I thrice did offer him a kingly crown, which thrice he did refuse. Was this ambition? Yet Brutus says he was ambitious. And sure, Brutus is an honorable man. I speak not to disprove what Brutus spoke, but here I am to speak what I do know. You all did love him once, not without cause. What cause withholds you then to mourn from him? Oh, judgment! Thou art fled to brutish beasts, and men have lost their reason. Bear with me. My heart is in the coffin there with Caesar, and I must pause till it come back to me. Now, did you see that I was reacting to the crowd, right? I have a scene partner. Every monologue you ever do is not a monologue, it's a scene. It's a dialogue. You just happen to be the only person in the room. Did you hear me shift those tactics, right? We went from let's praise Brutus to let's praise Caesar about how he was to me, but Brutus is cool. We're shifting back and forth. But then, what about this? Oh, but Brutus has said he's this. Oh, but what about this? But Brutus says he's this. But what about when he did this for all of you? But Brutus says he's this. So that by the time we get to the end, the crowd has made this leap, or at least started to make this leap, that maybe Brutus wasn't as honorable as we think. So that's, sort of a rough of this speech about my way into it, how my thinking of it. I hope this helps. I hope we all stay safe and sane in these crazy, crazy times. Be good to each other. John, thanks for having me, and hopefully I'll see you guys again soon.